Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to the Silverchair Universe Presents Scholarly IQ. We have Stuart Maxwell joining us today for a presentation. We are excited to have you with us to learn more about Scholarly IQ, part of the Silverchair Universe program. Just a few housekeeping things before we get started. You've all been muted, so if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please enter them into the chat box and we will have time for Q&A at the end. The webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent to you after the talk and will also be available online on Scholarly IQ's Universe page on our website. Finally, when the webinar is concluded, you'll get a brief survey sent to you. If you take a moment to just fill that out, it helps us to continue to improve both the program itself and our webinars. And with that, I will hand it over to Stuart.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much, Stephanie. Hopefully in a minute I'll be able to share my screen, or is that already set up?
Yep, it should be now sharing your screen.
Okay, great. Okay, so if you can confirm just that you can see the presentation. I have up available. Okay, great. Well, thanks very much for inviting me to do this morning. Just want to give sort of a bit of background about Scholarly IQ and why we're sort of taking part. I'm very pleased to be a member of the Silverchair Universe and really share some of our experience at Scholarly IQ that hopefully is of use to the attendees and listeners to this webinar. But very brief background about Scholarly IQ. We've been involved in the area of usage reporting for publishers since 2002, so very much since the beginning of Counter. And over those years, we've built up sort of a wide range of solutions and services and experience in best practices for how publishers can work with usage data to benefit their business. We work with a wide range of publishers. On the Silverchair platform, for example, there is Oxford University Press. We've already had a very successful implementation with them. And then we work with other publishers ranging from as well the likes of Clua and SPIE, very to sort of niche publishers like Accessible Archives, PDC, etc. as well. So quite a wide range of publishers that we deal with in relation to their usage data and analytics around that. And as well as working with these publishers, we're very active at industry level. So on behalf of our customers and also supporting the industry at a wider level, as well as Project Counter. There is the National Information Standards Organization's NISO that is the puts together standards around things like altmetrics and sushi. And then also members of areas like SSP, UKSG, and working on the Crossref distributed usage logging group as well, about sort of bringing sort of usage from other platforms back to the publishers so they can also report against those as well. So quite a lot's going on around usage as a metric that's sort of trusted and used by institutions, librarians to understand their subscriptions. And very much is a requirement for publishers to take part in that. And so one of the first things that we wanted to do was kind of share what common challenges that we find from publishers when they're thinking about usage data, why they look to work with Scholarly IQ, and then from that, some more information about possibly how you can work with sort of data and usage for sort of business transformation. But publishers that we deal with very much kind of for most, particularly in the STN space, but more and more the humanities and across sort of subscription publishers, non-compliance is really not an option anymore. The standard for Counter is very well set there. However, despite this, when publishers are looking to use this data, they have other data sources that can often have sort of crossing over, different numbers coming out from what essentially should be the same activity, looking at tools like maybe Google Analytics or Web Trends or Adobe, and getting different answers, different numbers for essentially what might be the same questions. And this causes an issue internally from internal stakeholders, about how to sort of really make decisions, when you're being told different numbers from different systems from different people. So this causes a problem in trust in data by business stakeholders, and this is a thing that can sometimes get in the way of proper decision making. Other areas in relation to data challenges, not having all the parameters that might be relevant to the business available within reports for flexible analysis, for looking really off the same hymn sheet, for making those decisions, that single version of the truth. Other issues around things like report generation time, the time lag between actually when usage occurs through to when you actually see usage reports to actually make decisions based on that. And sometimes the horse is bolted. Classic examples, things like sort of market trials. If we start that this week, we're already on Wednesday. If we don't start looking at the usage of those market trials until 2 to 7 weeks later on, that may just be too late. So timeliness of data, very important to a lot of our customers as well, to make actionable insights and decisions, in a timely fashion. Other issues, again, things like sort of resolving different reports, manual lifting, the heavy work to resolve different report sources, pull those into one place and start making sort of decisions from those. Also, not only give sort of time lags on data and man hours of effort, but again erodes that trust within the business about which numbers are right. And then, as I mentioned, things like distributed usage logging. Are we seeing usage activity from third parties? And then on top of all of this, if we think about the management of this data, working with it, the scalability, and then being able to make it available to the stakeholders that have an interest in that data, these have ongoing sort of costs to the business, both financially and in terms potentially of business growth. So Scholarly IQ is very much here to help publishers overcome these challenges, and then to make sure that that publishers are up to date with these evolving standards. So using the same metrics internally as are judged by externally. If that's part of the weights and measures in the industry, it makes sense to use the same currency, and therefore that usage currency to be ingrained with other business KPIs, the key performance indicators that we make decisions on. So Scholarly IQ very much helps publishers come through these sorts of challenges as some of the most common ones that we see. Obviously, there are probably quite a wide range more as well, but these are the ones we just wanted to sort of highlight that might be familiar for some of the attendees on the webinar today. So partnering with Scholarly IQ and the Silverchair Universe, we've already worked and successfully implemented for Oxford University Press's content on Silverchair, and through the partnership program is providing a discounted implementation. So a common practice of that implementation uses standardized page tag. So there's a bit of JavaScript that's inserted onto the page, and with the common nature of the Silverchair platform allows us to use that tag to capture most of the attributes that we're looking for. However, that tag can be further customized to bring in possibly other attributes that may be specific to an individual publisher on the platform, and then to bring in through other sort of metadata sources, etc. as well, which we'll come on to. But through this, what we can do is provide a quicker springboard to Scholarly IQ's data management analytics services, as well as the wider sort of support and best practices that we deliver for our publishing customers. So I'm going to introduce some of these, and very much looking forward to working through with Silverchair and Silverchair's customers to hopefully share some of these best practices as we go forwards. So the primary subject I wanted to look at today was this issue about data-driven transformation, how we work with data to run business analytics, and this is really transitioning from what we are standardized and aware of in counter reporting and making this more as a functional business analytics for a publisher to work with internally. And so when we think about this data-driven transformation, there's a number of subjects that just want to sort of cover through from this. The first is understanding stakeholder objectives. Who are our stakeholders? What are the types of information they are looking for from usage? How can we provide that? And therefore, how can we sort of grow our business and transform it in regards to those stakeholders internally and externally? Through from this, those measurements, the metrics, and the data we provide to them needs to be trusted, needs to be transparent. It's providing the same benchmark and grounding of metrics across all these stakeholders. So it is that single version of the truth, but with a trusted and consistent and comparable metric within that from the counter data. The third area, once we're pulling this data together, is to have flexibility, and I'll come into a number of areas about where Scholarly IQ supports a flexible approach and agile to deliver to the various different nuances that publishers have in regards to their objectives, their requirements, and their setup. Through from this flexibility, we can look to expand the data set from just purely counter data, but look to use a wider data set to be able to answer questions that are slightly different from the standardized counter reports that cater for these other stakeholder objectives that we'll go into. And through from this is to keep that data in its most granular form. So we're talking this at the event level rather than an aggregated level. And then for that data to be deliverable through actionable analytics or through other data sources, other ways of importing or accessing that data, so that the business can make decisions on that and provide those to those stakeholders. And coming towards the end, a little piece just around data governance, which is an extremely sort of hot topic at the moment recently, particularly in relation to things like Cambridge Analytica and Facebook data, etc. So talking a bit about sort of our approach at Scholarly IQ to data governance and data security for the publishers we work with. And then finally a bit about sort of the support services that we provide to enable and help publishers to go through this kind of transformation that we're talking about here. So first of all, looking at stakeholder objectives, traditionally in Counter, we're looking at librarians, looking at subscription value, and understanding that in relation to their budgets, etc., with different publishers. However, the Counter metric is a trusted measurement for how content is performing or a platform's performing, etc., is fundamental as a currency potentially for how we judge all parts of our business. So an analytics team are looking to provide this business insight for business optimization across these stakeholders. And these may be from librarians and consortia, as I mentioned, looking at things like their accountability, their subscription budgets, but otherwise it may also be areas such as management or sales. I mentioned earlier on about sales, looking at things like trial accounts. And if we set up a trial, we want to be understanding how that usage is going. Do we have an evidence-based acquisition model? We use usage data to justify actually and help demonstrate that there is, a meaningful user interaction, engagement with content, and therefore the value of the subscriptions is there. But outside of those traditional areas, we may be looking internally within marketing for market intelligence or campaign optimization, publishing, editorial, where we're looking at things like content acquisition, and we got some stuff we work in relation to concepts and topics that I'll touch on to as well. But externally, it may also relate to our authors. By pulling in the data set for the authors against the article ID, we can help authors understand the impact, the amount of usage there is of their content. We have publishers who work with that author dimension with their counter usage data to be able to provide the metrics and the data for their royalty reporting. In the similar way, funding bodies starting to look at usage data for how a publisher, particularly on areas like Gold Open Access, are actually delivering usage of content for that Gold Open Access content. So again, accountability of funding. Counter is a widely understood and a widely valued metric that has a high level of trust and confidence. So using that metric for the performance indicators for different stakeholders there, but with a transparency is of high value to make that available to them. So extending out from the basic sort of counter metrics that we talk from and putting that across a wider level of dimensions here. But this issue about the trusted metric, the currency that is industry compliant, it is independently audited and it's agreed by the industry about what that standard should be, underlying and underpinning all the reporting analytics that we do, that we'll be discussing here, very much helps give that trust and accountability that this single version of the truth that is applied to all these different stakeholders through these different channels has a meaningful value to it, and therefore to make decisions based upon trusted data, and they're fundamental to everything that we're doing here. So Counter already being familiar, hopefully, is then taking it to that next level to business analytics that is meaningful to the business. And so I mentioned about flexibility here, and there are three key areas at Scholar IQ that we really look at to maintain a flexibility, because the nuances and the differences between the publishers that we work with does vary, and quite often within publishers, some of the different data sources that things may come from, for example, different departments with different sales teams and different databases, there needs to be flexibility to pull these data elements together. So at Scholar IQ, we have flexibility in the types of data sources we work with. We are platform independent, have flexibility to work across any. However, with Silverchair and the Universe program is to have a standardized page tag and to facilitate a simpler implementation on that. But then also flexibility in the other metadata sources that we might pull through, and also areas like third-party sources that might be relevant as well. But if we go back to the stakeholder interests, if we're starting to think about things such as maybe funders or authors, we start to understand from those which are the other data sources that we can pull into this counter data that will then actually make that more valued, and we can therefore report to those. By including dimensions against things such as funders against the DOI, the article identifier, we can then start to pivot the reporting of the counter metrics to be able to fund and provide that data back to the funders for their interest within the business as well. We also have flexibility on the data architecture that we work with. Each publisher that we deal with, we essentially set up a unique and standalone data set database for them. We're not trying to fit it into a predefined box. And depending on size and scale and scope for it, we can work between SQL or cloud solutions such as Hadoop or Redshift, and find the best balance between the scale of data, the performance we're looking to deliver to, and the value within sort of the cost dimension of delivering the data architecture that's right for those customers. So flexibility there is about making the performance work at a cost-effective level for the customers that we deal with. And then once we've built the data set, the other side as well is about the data access. We have standardized, pre-built Scholar IQ reporting environments, so things like Sushi, librarian portals, a .NET internal publisher reporting, which is a very flexible and powerful on-demand analytics tool. But other tools, for example, feeding the data in things like Salesforce, where sales teams will be looking at customer data, makes sense potentially to actually put the data available back within that, so sales teams see the data or within the CRM system that they're already familiar with. So making that data available into preferred reporting tools for whichever stakeholder has an interest in it makes sense to democratize that, and therefore the data is used by the relevant users. So we can segment and partition data, we can provide full ODBC access to that data source so that the publisher has the full power of making use of this data set that we build for them. Okay, so when we think about this data set, what we're doing is we're taking that counter data, as I've mentioned, and we are pulling in various disparate data sources and underpinning that with trusted, audited, industry compliant metrics. So internally, I've mentioned a few of these. So, for example, the authors, a partner society dimension. If a publisher has partner societies they co-publish with, well, by adding that in against the content relevant to those, we can provide reporting against those dimensions as well. Account types, so trials, institutional, academic, whatever else, funder or source of content. Topic metadata we can take, and we can create a scoring system whereby a full text download may be worth a score, say for example, of 5 times usage versus an abstract of 1 time, and from this associate relevant topic content ideas from a taxonomy to be able to show trends and movements in which topic content is driving usage or not. And if we look at that over time, we can see that as a trending of what's increasing, what's decreasing. Other areas obviously as well, things like financial data, sometimes it's pulling it into the data environment where we work with, sometimes we're pushing the data back out into the financial sort of database that a publisher is working with as well. There's a two-way flow that we can work with, as well as these sort of internal data sources. And really, with the flexibility at Scholar IQ is to understand the availability of sources, which ones are relevant to the business questions, pull those into the data environment that we've got, but making sure that we have the matching pairs so that this becomes part of that wider data set. But we also have work that we can do with external data. So recently, for example, the PSI, the IP registry, it's approximately 60,000 institutions and 1.5 billion IP addresses. We have set up a service whereby we can use that IP registry to do attribution of usage against institutions that are part of that. And what that allows a publisher to do is to start to see and attribute and report usage against institutions that may not be part of their own database at this point in time. If they're part of the IP registry, we can provide that reporting on top of that. So things like turnaways, access, usage to open access content, etc. The publisher can start to see that and report it against institutions that otherwise wouldn't be part of their own data set. So very exciting about providing a whole new area of data reporting in that field, and to really a unique third-party data set that the IP registry has. Another third-party integration worked through is Unsilo, and Unsilo gathers concepts associated with content by data mining that, and as with the sort of the topic metadata program we've put together, by associating this with the DOI, we can create a scoring system of usage to show which concepts are trending up or trending down, and then by that being part of the whole same data set that we have at Scholarly IQ on behalf of the publisher, we can then segment those topics against any of the parameters that are there. So that may be against content types, it may be particular titles, but as well it might be looking at it in relation to possibly funders, it may be looking in relation to things like accounts. So we can start to show sort of trending usage by geographic area or by the accounts, providing more insight about kind of what is happening in relation to topics and concepts, as well as having underlying that things like sort of journal trends and usage. Concepts provides another dimension to how we start to understand this. Other third-party areas as well, I mentioned distributed usage logging. So distributed usage where content goes out to other platforms and then being able to pull that through. It's a cross-REST initiative that's active at the moment, and very much there as well. That is going to be looking to pull that back into these data sets so that publishers have a wider and a more comprehensive picture they can show to their customers about how usage is coming from their customers' accounts. And then things like altmetrics, again, they're taking the DOI, bringing in some of those altmetric scores against that, so that usage reporting sits alongside altmetric scores to understand how they are performing in relation to each other. Okay, so building out this data set to a much wider and larger set of data. The third area we're looking at then is the granularity of this underneath it, which is keeping that data at a raw event level rather than an aggregated, pulled up set of data. And this means that we can be very flexible on creating reports on the fly, not having to predict what a report needs to be, is to create that from historical data and provide that powerful analysis. And really what we're doing is we're looking to capture the whole picture of every event and have that available for our analysis, rather than a condensed aggregated table, which is what the counter reports in their pure form do by rolling it up by the product or the title level by month, etc. So granularity and accessibility to that underlying data, very fundamental to where our publishers are able to run reports and analysis and drive insight on the fly. The next area is making the data actionable. And typically at the moment, most counter reports are about providing a monthly report and making that available by the 15th of the following month. And as I mentioned, that's fine as far as counter is concerned, and maybe as external users, stakeholders, to look to understand what has happened historically. But for a publisher, we're more interested potentially in looking at what's happening now. If we've made a change, how's that occurring and what's going on with that? So we have delivered, and actually also with a Silverchair customer, near real-time reporting. More commonly, we're doing next day usage reporting. And what this means is that we have event level data, so the timestamp of when the event occurred, and then also having that for every single day, next day reporting of usage that has just occurred. And from that, our publishers are far more able to manage their business, manage their trial accounts, any product changes, any product launches, any of that, interpreting it with metrics that they are judged by, that they have trust and confidence in. Okay, the next area is then also, as well as having this data available, is the reporting environments for that. So I mentioned we have our own .NET built out flexible analytics where we can customize reports by any attributes available there. We can create calculated metrics. We can customize and drag and drop metrics, identifiers, any parameter available from those fields that we're building out that we mentioned. So not just counter, other areas like author, etc. there as well, and build those out into reports and dashboards that are meaningful to the business. And through this environment that we have ourselves, that can provide full internal reporting with the full flexibility to every dimension and every parameter. But we can also fully customize this. We use this for our own counter R5 reporting, so where it segments the data against R5 by the account when the account logs in. But in the same way, we can pivot it around that, whereby we can provide partner reporting for partner publishers, societies that a publisher may have. It may be looking at funders, whatever else that we have, and different hierarchies, different tier levels of business users as well. So a fully controlled environment that we have for providing that actionable analytics internally. But as well as that, by having an open and flexible environment for this, as well as our own usage analytics, we can feed the data that we get back out via APIs. We can provide ODBC access to it to put that data back into tools like Salesforce, CRM tools, back in with your financial data, etc. So that data, while Scholarly IQ manage and process this and enrich it, we make it fully accessible for the business to use it as if it is just sitting on their own server. So this full granular data is there available to multiple applications, and for that to be customized depending on how the publisher is going to get best value from it, depending on those stakeholder objectives. So that's overall kind of where most of our publishers get the highest value in what they're doing, having an enriched data set. However, we should also say that what we're doing at Scholarly IQ, this data set we're doing, as I mentioned, is to have a distinct dedicated data warehouse for each of the publishers we work with, because we have found historically there are specific needs that when you get to this kind of level, that the databases need to be built out that way. That said, however, our data governance and our agreements very much are that the data is the publisher's data, and Scholarly IQ fully protects this and does not share or benchmark it with any other service. So the publishers we deal with can be confident that their data is fully governed and it is maintained and held just as if they were maintaining and holding it themselves. Scholarly IQ do not do any industry survey analysis or anything else across this data across our publishers. It is siloed and protected for those individual publishers. And through with this, we are very strong on adhering to both people, process, and technology, as well as international agreements to adhere to data governance standards, such as GDPR, that those controls in processes and people and technology are in place to protect that data. And our standard data governance requirements are there for the most common features that our publishers have. If, however, some publishers have some higher levels of data sensitivity, maybe with personal data, or there may be medical data within there, those other kind of elements that increase the sensitivity and risk associated with that, we have the flexibility to adapt the data governance, the technology, the other security procedures that are in place there to heighten that depending on the sensitivity of data that comes through as well. So flexibility in our approach to data governance, however, most fundamentally is that it is protected and solely remains the property of those publishers. We just act as gateholders and guardians for that. And then finally, from Scholarly IQ, as I mentioned, we've been delivering counter services since 2002, and over the years have built up this experience of working with a lot of major publishers, overcoming challenges in working with different sources of data and different complexities, and then building best practices in what we do. And have a fanatical team. We are actually based out of San Antonio in Texas, and we provide a phenomenal response rate, response times, can give incredible references from our customers about how we deliver services and solutions, and then also delivers the support to maintain those as well. We realize for the customers we deal with how critical business insight, timeliness of data, and being able to make confident decisions on those is, both to their customers and to themselves internally. And so our service level agreements and the professional services and the support levels that we look to provide from Scholarly IQ are all very much recognizing that level of critical sort of business importance to maintain that. So our fee structures, which are based around volume of data, so volumes of page impressions that we report from Scholarly IQ as part of the overall volume of traffic, and there's a scaling fee associated with those. Be delighted to go through people with. However, if there ever are network issues, hardware issues, those kind of things that sort of actually affect availability, our SLA is actually there to reimburse customers on a scaling process as well, if in the event those things occur. So very much at Scholarly IQ is about putting our business on the line of delivering to the standard that our customers expect. And as I say, delighted to look at specific requirements that Silverchair partners have, and then to look at how we would fit into those, how we could deliver those specific needs, and then also show how we look to deliver that, and then how our SLA supports that as well. So that's kind of is the very sort of quick overview of Scholarly IQ. I think I've come in about 10 minutes spare, hopefully for some questions on the planned 45 minutes for this call. But I hope this has been very much of interest. My contact details are here on the last slide, and very much welcome any inquiries from anybody about work we're doing at industry level, experience we've had working with other publishers, best practices or some of the ideas we've discussed about working with data, and some of the approaches about making that data work for the business and pulling these different other data sources together for that as well. So I hope this has been an enjoyable, if brief, introduction to Scholarly IQ, and look forward to any inquiries, and hopefully running some sort of demos, some audits of data, that kind of thing, to show potentially what you may already be sitting on with data at your business, but possibly haven't been able to access or get hold of to generate value from it at this stage. Hopefully you'll find at Scholarly IQ our experience over the last 16 or so years working with the publishers we deal with is very well suited to help you on that journey. Okay, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you on future webinars. Thank you, Stuart.
Thanks, Stephanie.